So last week we talked a little bit about what is happiness a little bit. I want to explore this and some methods. We'll see some methods. Um, Today is going to be much more of a workshop. We're going to be doing a lot for each of these sessions. We're going to try. I'm going to have stuff to do and some work to do also during the week. Small things, they won't take up a lot of time, but just some ideas. And I hope that everybody else pitches in ideas so we could all work together on these things. So right now I'm going to share my screen, and let me just bring this up. I'm going to show you a couple of videos now, 2 videos. And what I would like you to do is there'll be a question at the end of the videos. Too short, we're not going to see the whole video. I will include the whole videos. It's called when I send it out. But in the meantime, let me share this. So here's the first video. Everybody see it?
Yes.
Jack Whitaker Jr. West Virginia building contractor Andrew Jackson, aka Jack Whitaker Jr., won $315 million on Christmas Day 2002. At that time, he was the single largest jackpot winner in history. Whitaker was already successful. He was the president of a contracting company called Diversified Enterprises Construction and had a net worth of over $1 million. He had a loving family and several healthy, happy grandkids. After winning the prize, he intended to do the right thing and pledged 10% of his winnings to various Christian charities. He also dumped $14 million into the Jack Whitaker Foundation, a nonprofit that provided food and clothing to low-income families. What could possibly go wrong? While Whitaker did some good with his money, he had his demons. He was arrested twice. A woman filed a lawsuit against him after claims that he groped her at a racetrack. While he was visiting a strip club, thieves took $545,000 in cash from his car. He eventually started bouncing checks and his wife divorced him. As a result of his win, Whitaker also left a trail of dead bodies. His granddaughter's boyfriend was found dead of an overdose inside his home, and she fatally overdosed months later at a different location. Her mother also died of undetermined causes. Whitaker, left with no family or no fortune, said in hindsight, "I wish I'd torn that ticket up."
So that's one person, one thing. I'd like to show you a second video now.
In his Thanksgiving proclamation, President Obama asks Americans to offer gratitude to our men and women in uniform for their many sacrifices. And that reminded us of a soldier that David Martin introduced us to 8 years ago in the early days of the Iraq War. He'd been seriously wounded, but David tells us he's made an incredible recovery. In fact, you might have seen him last night. He won Dancing with the Stars.
We met J.R. Martinez in 2003, 7 months after his Humvee hit a landmine on the road to Baghdad.
40% of my body was burned. They say 34, 33% of it was third degree.
The first thing he saw when he came to in the burn unit was his mother. But then the once handsome 19-year-old had to confront himself in the mirror.
The first time I seen my face, it was pretty hard. The doctors didn't want to let me do it yet, but I said I got to get strong and I got to learn how to deal with it.
Imagine going out in public for the first time.
You must see people when they look at your scars.
Yes, I do.
They do a double take or they look away or...
Yeah, it's happened a lot. Because I would just say to myself, I know why I look like this, and you don't.
He had been through 22 surgeries and had many, many more to go to reconstruct his face.
I've seen pictures of what things can turn out to be, and it's just, to me, it's just amazing. It's just like, wow, I can be back to what I used to be.
That seemed hard to believe, but it turned out to be an understatement. He became an actor on daytime television, a profession in which looks are everything.
Let's not go down this self-pity road again.
And he became a motivational speaker, a profession for which you might say he is overqualified.
Come on, get up! Get up!
But if you think he's left all the pain and disfigurement behind, watch him struggle with his emotions while receiving an award from other war veterans.
I'm able to do the things that I do today. All of us are, because of you guys out there. So all of you that wear the uniform.
Last night, when he won the finals of Dancing with the Stars, he gave people a whole new reason to stare. Not because of his scars, but because he's a star. David Martin, CBS News.
So now I wanted to ask everybody, so why do you think that the lottery winner is not happy in life, and the soldier who said, he actually says in his thing at the end of his he said in his speech, I didn't have that, but he actually gave a speech on this, and he asks, and he says that the greatest thing that ever happened to him was when that bomb went off and all this happened, because his life was just kind of just going through the motions and so on, and now he built this whole life for it. So the question is why is the lottery winner miserable and the injured soldier loving life? What do you think?
Fell into his lap and he wasn't ready to handle it, as opposed to somebody else who had to work his way through it.
So because,
He said for struggling.
so you think it's because one it was handed to them, and the other one had a struggle to fight for what they had, and the struggle, that there's happiness in the struggle, you're saying?
It's also, it's a sense of control that you know, he was the person who was hurt. He was in charge of his own destiny. He had to make, you know, he was handed something terrible, but he had to choose what to do with it. And he had to focus on himself and find the inner strength, as opposed to somebody who was given this great reward, you know, without earning it.
Okay, but you saw that the lottery winner, like, people pray for the lottery all the time, right? And they say when they're going to do it, this is what they're going to do. They're going to, like, give money to charity. They're going to help change the world. You could do a lot of nice things with money, right? You could do a lot of nice things with money. Actually, you could do a lot of nice things, not just with money, but just having money, right? Actually, the truth is you could do more by just sometimes having money than ever even spending money, because the influence that you could get other people, you could influence other rich people to do things. We see that with Bill Gates, right? Just by his having money, even not using his own money, right? He's able to get a lot of other rich people to donate and to change things by just having money, right? Having influence. So you see that really the money, in a way, should be able to bring about a certain amount of happiness, and yet he was miserable. I want to look at another video here, where we're going to see somebody talk about this particular issue. So let's see what he says on why some people are happy, what happiness is when it comes to these type of things. So this is a YouTube video for a TED Talk given by somebody named Dan Gilbert. So I'm going to share that with you right this second. Let's see what he says and see what you think about what he says on this.
Invite you to contemplate, and you can try to simulate them and tell me which one you think you might prefer. One of them is winning the lottery. This is about $314 million. And the other is becoming paraplegic. So just give it a moment of thought. You probably don't feel like you need a moment of thought. And interestingly, there are data on these two groups of people, data on how happy they are. And this is exactly what you expected, isn't it? But these aren't the data. I made these up. These are the data. You failed the pop quiz and you're hardly 5 minutes into the lecture. Because the fact is that a year after losing the use of their legs and a year after winning the lotto, lottery winners and paraplegics are equally happy with their lives. Now, don't feel too bad about failing the first pop quiz, because everybody fails all of the pop quizzes all of the time. The research that my laboratory has been doing, that economists and psychologists around the country have been doing, have revealed something really quite startling to us. Something we call the impact bias, which is the tendency for the simulator to work badly, for the simulator to make you believe that different outcomes are more different than in fact they really are. From field studies to laboratory studies, we see that winning or losing an election, gaining or losing a romantic partner, getting or not getting a promotion, passing or not passing a college test, on and on, have far less impact, less intensity, and much less duration than people expect them to have. In fact, a recent study, this almost floors me, a recent study showing how major life traumas affect people suggests that if it happened over 3 months ago, with only a few exceptions, it has no impact whatsoever on your happiness. Why? Because happiness can be synthesized. Sir Thomas Browne wrote in 1642, "I am the happiest man alive. I have that in me that can convert poverty to riches, adversity to prosperity. I am more invulnerable than Achilles. Fortune hath not one place to hit me." What kind of remarkable machinery does this guy have in his head? Well, it turns out it's precisely the same remarkable machinery that all of us have. Human beings have something that we might think of as a psychological immune system, a system of cognitive processes, largely non-conscious cognitive processes, that help them change their views of the world so that they can feel better about the worlds in which they find themselves. Like Sir Thomas, you have this machine. Unlike Sir Thomas, you seem not to know it. We synthesize happiness, but we think happiness is a thing to be found. Now, you don't need me to give you too many examples of people synthesizing happiness, I suspect, though I'm going to show you some experimental evidence. You don't have to look very far for evidence. As a challenge to myself, since I say this once in a while in lectures, I took a copy of the New York Times and tried to find some instances of people synthesizing happiness. And here are 3 guys synthesizing happiness. I'm so much better off physically, financially, emotionally, and almost every other way, mentally, almost every other way. I don't have 1 minute's regret. It was a glorious experience. I believe it turned out for the best. Who are these characters who are so damn happy? Well, the first one is Jim Wright. Some of you are old enough to remember. He was the chairman of the House of Representatives. And he resigned in disgrace when this young Republican named Newt Gingrich found out about a shady book deal he had done. He lost everything. Most powerful Democrat in the country, lost everything. He lost his money, lost his power. What does he have to say all these years later about it? I am so much better off physically, financially, mentally, and in almost every other way. What other way would there be to be better off? Vegetably, minerally, animally? He's pretty much covered in there. Maurice Bickham is somebody you've never heard of. Maurice Bickham uttered these words. Upon being released, he was 78 years old. He'd spent 37 years in Louisiana State Penitentiary for a crime he didn't commit. He was ultimately exonerated at the age of 78 through DNA evidence. And what did he have to say about his experience? I don't have 1 minute's regret. It was a glorious experience. Glorious! This guy not saying.
So you get the idea here. You can watch the rest of the TED Talk. But you see here that we see that happiness can be changed and synthesized as we go. Our level of happiness, like when somebody wins the lottery, they go up in happiness, and then you kind of plateau, and we get some sort of, way of just going through the world, and our happiness levels kind of just plateau. So it seems that like nothing external to us is necessarily going to make us happier. Whether we win the lottery or even when bad things occur to us, we see that we are able to, with the right outlook, able to go on with our lives, and be able to reach that certain level of happiness. And then in hindsight, we're able to see the event and say, thank God this happened because of the way our minds, try to look at the situation and create happiness to it. So the question really is how do we bring about in our everyday things? So people become very down, people become depressed. And one of the things that when people get down, so what you do is try to just keep them going so that they reach that next level where they kind of plateau and get the happiness again. But, there's a lot of, especially now with COVID, there's a lot of like feeling of being blasé, feeling like, that, it's hard to see happiness in many things that we do in our lives. Next, there's this guy named Clay Cockrell. He's a wealth therapy person. It's very interesting. You can have it here. I have the whole article. You could click on it and you could watch it. But this guy, he actually he tries to bring this certain level of happiness to people who are rich. And he talks all about the different issues that they have in their lives which you wouldn't even consider. Like everybody thinks, oh yeah, I want to be happy, I want to be rich, but they have so many issues of trusting people. Like they don't have anybody. They feel everybody's out for their money. They have to keep right. They have to, when they want to get married or they want to marry their children, they have to do all this investigation on the people, and they have to do prenuptials and all these things, and all these things weigh on them, and they feel like they have nobody to talk to because their issues, their problems are not problems that the regular person has. So people say, oh, poor baby, but really for them, it is a poor baby. Like it's really a big problem for them, even though nobody else could relate to those problems. So he talks to people through those problems. So the question is how do we capture the moments that we have in this world, the everyday moments, not that, so we know that only the big issues, we will plateau, whether it's really something really bad or something that is not bad, but how do we capture the everyday moments and make them more meaningful in our lives? And so this way we could each day find the happiness. Like what he was talking about, what Gilbert was talking about, was that no matter what the big event is, you will eventually reach a certain level, a plateau of happiness. But I'm looking really for now, every day, I want to capture some happiness in my life. How do I do that? How do I make my life a little bit more meaningful to me? So, does anybody have any ideas?
Maybe by enjoying the moment or by sharing it on Facebook.
Yeah, that's a good one. Let's go to that one because that's next.
A few years ago, I was at a retreat for families of children with cancer. We were sitting around in a circle, in a formal kind of a meeting, and a young chassid said that previous year, his son was diagnosed with leukemia. 10 days later, he's sitting in synagogue, sitting in shul on Yom Kippur, and he said a wave of happiness washes over him like he's never experienced in his entire life. And I was puzzled. What does that all mean? And then I was even more puzzled when I look around the room and I see everybody, all the other parents, nodding in agreement with tears glistening in their eyes.
So that's Dr. Pelkowitz. That's Dr. Pelkowitz. And we're going to see want to see a little bit more of this. But you mentioned keeping to the appreciating the moment. Think about what he just said. Think about that story that he just said. I think a very, very powerful story. So here's a father who finds out that their child has leukemia, and yet, again, he's very appreciative, and he's very appreciative, and everybody else in the group, right? They all could relate to it, and he, Dr. Pelkowitz, as an outsider, can't relate to it. What was it that? What do you think it was? What was the thing that brought them that appreciation?
I think it's people that you get support from people that you didn't think cared, or just people that rallied around you, and you get support from one another, and you didn't realize how much help you can get from the society and your community. Community help. But I think it's something more internal, right? I don't know, it could be. Yeah, it's definitely that. I mean, you definitely get that. But he's talking about something that's a little bit internal as well.
Finding himself in shul on Yom Kippur. Finding himself in Yom Kippur.
Yeah. So what was the wave that he felt? The wave that came over them? So just being there in Yom Kippur.
Maybe the praying for God. It's a whole will help them. There's hope.
Whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. What? Sorry. Praying.
The praying to God gives him an outlet, and it may alleviate the problem. God will, by praying to God, will make him the little boy well.
yourself before God on the holiest of days.
All right, let's listen to what Dr. Pelkowitz feels. Say later on in the lecture, he comes back to the story. Let's hear what he has to say. Maybe we will, or maybe we won't. Sorry, let me just get it started and then I'll share it again.
What about living in the minute? What about mindfulness? Research in positive psychology shows that savoring, stopping to enjoy the really precious moments in our life makes an enormous, enormous difference in terms of happiness. When I go to different parts of the world and talk to children attending Jewish high schools, and I talk to them about their lives and about their spirituality, they almost all say the same thing. They almost all say, there's not enough stillness in our day. And they describe days that go from constant texting and constantly being connected in one way or another to their devices and running from subject to subject during their school day. It's interesting. Almost 1,000 years ago, Rabbeinu Bachya talked about a 4-word prayer that informs our times and informs this issue. He said, Hashem yatzileni mi pisur hanefesh. God save me from fragmentation of my soul. Jewish world has an antidote to this. It's called Shabbos. Shabbos is about being, not doing. It's about the ability to step back and savor what's most important in our lives. Let's go read the story of young Chassid at the cancer retreat. What was going on there? How can he describe 10 days after what must be one of the most traumatic challenges of life as being infused with happiness and have all the other parents agree with him? The answer was that at that moment, he was tied to what matters. It was the opposite of fragmentation. He was tied and surrounded by family, friends, and faith. Simcha, according to some, is tied to putting 2 Hebrew words together, sham moach, where your head is at. If your head is in a place of meaning, happiness will ensue. Author Robert Brault says, enjoy the little things. For one day, you may look back and realize that they were the big things.
I think that's very, very powerful. It's really the idea of savoring the power of now, really savoring the moments that we have within the world. The more you focus on time, past or future, the more you miss out on the now, the most precious thing that there is. And so he said that really when you had the sickness, when somebody has the sickness, so it's like everything else gets blocked out. I was just talking, I had one of the people in my school, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she said that like when the words cancer came out, everything else was like, she heard that and she couldn't hear anything else. And she became like hyper focused, like there was nothing else but the word cancer, right? And for the next like weeks, all she could do is focus on her day, like what's going one moment to the next moment. And she said she didn't see anything, from the past or anything in the future. She was just like very, very focused on it, on the issue. And it could be that, that's what he's saying is that the chassid, they were able to now start focusing on what Sam was saying was his family, friends, and, you're saying family, friends, and faith, but really the focus on now. So how do we focus more on now? How do we savor the moments that we have within this world, the little few moments that we have? So that's really what I wanted to focus on now is on this whole idea of savoring the moments. If we look at this week's parsha, we'll go bring it back to the parsha. So the parsha tells us, it brings the pasuk tells us, Vayira elav Hashem b'olonei mamre v'hu yoshev b'pesach oel kechol mayom. That what happened, Avraham was sitting at the entrance of the tent, and it was really hot in the day. And Rashi tells us, what was he doing? Vayira alav, that he was who was, so it doesn't say, it says who. So it says that Hashem appeared to him. Levaker esachola. Why? Because it was the third day from his bris milah. So he was sick, right? He was a sick person at the time of this thing. So he was sitting out while he was very sick. He was sitting out, and he was sitting out in the heat of the day. And then Rashi tells us this strange thing, right? So what happens? It says, Kechom hayom, that it was the heat of the day. Hotzei Hashem chema. Hashem took out the sun from its minarsikia shalo, right? He took out the sun, and why? To keep everybody away. To make a tircha for orchim, so that the people should be bothered, and then they won't come and visit him, and then it will leave him alone. But what happened? Why did Hashem send these three different people to him? Because it says, Rashi says, because he was bothered. He was bothered by it. He was bothered by the fact that he didn't have anybody. So this is a little bit what, I think this is a little bit what Dr. Pelkowitz was saying, that part of our happiness, part of our ability to savor things comes from, one, the ability to have people to savor it with, and two, to be focused on something, to be focused on life, to savor it. Too much of our day, as Dr. Pelkowitz was saying, is too much of our day is spent not focused, right? Too much of our day, we're all over the place. We're not focused on everything. We're busy running from one thing to another thing, and we can't really focus on any one thing. We can't ever appreciate even the people around us because we're too busy doing something. And we need those people around us. And so here we see from Rashi that in order for him to be able to be healed, Avram able to be healed, he needs the people around him. He needs people, but he also needs something to focus on, something to give his life meaning, and and so he could savor those moments. Here it says, savor every moment in your life and experience its magnificence. It will not come back again. So which ways can we, so now I want to focus on, for the next few minutes, I want to focus on practically different ways that we can go about savoring moments in our life. What kind of things can we do to savor moments? Now comes the workshop area of this. What kind of things can we do to start savoring the moments that we have?
Talk about the experience.
Yes, that's number one.
Not be in such a rush.
Not be in such a rush, right? So let's look at the first one. Share your days and you will share your lives. This is something that I say often during this is what I say often to a chassan and kala. I say it's the most important thing. I think it's the most important thing that you can have in a relationship at all. But it's the most important thing you have with people, even if it's not a marriage. But I think it's the most important thing in a marriage. Share your days and you'll share your lives. I always say, if you share your days, you'll share your lives. If not, you become like two ships sailing in different directions, right? Because what happens is that if somebody's day is, if let's say one of the spouses, they have to be political correct, I can't say the wife, will say one of the spouses is at home, is with the child, right? Because today we have a lot of husbands who are also with the child, and their day deals with diapers, and their day deals with making food and getting the kids on Zoom today and all that stuff. So that's their day, right? And if you don't share that day, you're not a part of that day. If you come home from work and you're dealing with the jobs in your work that that are maybe complicated and so on, you don't have anybody to share that with. You don't share that with them. So then what happens is you have a life at work and then another life at home, and it never equals anything. It just, you have two separate lives. But when you share your days, when I tell my wife, some of these issues that I have at school, not that there is such things as privacy, and sometimes you can't share everything, but you share generally what's going on in the school. So she's now working with me on my job. She's a part of that job with me. And I'm a part of her job because she tells me what's happened. So I'm always wondering, well, what happened when you had this problem? How did you handle this problem? It becomes a part of my day too. And this is like one of the number of things, when I send this out, you could click on this. There's a study here. It talks about all the importance of how much sharing your life really connects you to others and how important that is for us in our lives. That's what it says in Koheles. I think that's what this is the pshat in the meaning. Rei chaim ima isha asher ahavta kol yemei chayei hevlecha. So what is it? You should enjoy life with your wife, whom you love, all the days of your life of your vanity. Okay, so he throws in the life of your life is your worthless life, but if you want to get some pleasure within this world. In other words, if you want to make the world meaningful, so you should share the days with your wife. You should share your life. And the only way to do that is to share the experience. And I think we do this a lot in Judaism. I think it's very important. Here's some ideas that I have. I mean, you could tell me other ideas. I think that we should come up with of ways of sharing. One is sharing at the Shabbos table. It's not Shabbos table. Shouldn't just, we're lucky we have Shabbos. Most people don't even have that. They have dinner sometimes if they could get together. Most of the times they're watching TV or something else that people have at the dinner table, or people are playing video games or so on. But we have Shabbos table. And so during the Shabbos table, we ask, well, what'd you do during the week? I know with the kids, it's always like, nothing. So what happened in school? Nothing. And that's the general thing. But what you do is to get around the nothing, you ask more pointed questions. You try to get involved. So what are your friends, who your friends, you start asking about the friends, asking about things that happen, and it kind of brings it out a little bit. You get to know the friends, you get to know the teachers, you get to know what's going on. And the more you do, the more you're sharing in their experience. And you'll see that a lot of times kids do even want to open up because they want to have somebody to share. They want to share their life with somebody. Shiva, I think, is a major thing where we share stories. And what do? We try to capture those moments. We try to savor the moments that we had with the person. And I always explain when somebody's going for Shiva, I always say, what is the point of Shiva? I say that Shiva is a memory book. You're making a memory book. You're telling stories over and over and over, the same stories. But it's cementing it. It's making this memory book that you have that you're able to go on with in life. You're rehashing, you're re-savoring the moments that you had with the person. And then somebody tells you something about that, and you could appreciate it much more because you're there. You were dedicated time. You're not rushing. You're focused on this thing. And when you hear the story, you go, wow, you savor that moment and savor that story and realize that those stories are not, that there's not going to be new stories with this particular person, only stuff that you hear about, but there may not be anything new coming from that. So this way you're able to savor all those moments that you had with the person. And I think that the biggest way that we do it is during the Pesach Seder, right? The Pesach Seder is we rehash the history. We savor the moments that we had throughout our Jewish history. It's actually one of the questions that I have at my Seder. I throw out, we have always questions. We go around the room. We do all these things. A lot of people do it. But one of the things I say is, tell us a story from the Pesachs of the past. I also do it on yard sites as well. I always want to know when somebody tells me they have a yard site, or when I see there's a yard site in shul, I always say, tell me one story. Bring the person alive to me. Let's savor the person. Let's savor that moment. And I think that's the best way to celebrate a yard site, is not just to light a candle. You light a candle, okay, it's a remembrance. But when are you remembering? Where's the remembrance? You remember by telling a story. Tell me something, bring the person to life to me. I never met the person in most of the cases. So tell me one story that brings that person to light, and you'll save the moment too. We do it in my house all the time, that on the yard sites, everybody, we say, okay, we sit on the dinner table and we tell a story that maybe the kids heard a million times, or maybe they didn't hear, whatever. Well, we tell stories about the person who is having the yard site. Take a mental picture. So I'll tell you, when I was at my wedding, so I was about to go down. And this guy who I didn't even know really comes over to me right before I was about to walk down. And he said something to me that I thought was brilliant. It was brilliant. He was a strange guy, a different kind of guy, but brilliant thing that he said to me. And it has kept me, and I gave this advice to all the chassan. Every time I meet with a chassan or a kala, I always give this advice. I say, when you're going down, take a picture, a mental picture. You'll have the physical pictures too. And that's what we're going to talk about in journaling. You'll have the physical pictures, but take a mental picture of this moment. When you see the har coming down, if I'm talking to the chassan, which most of the time is, say, take a picture of the and have that mental picture. And when you get into arguments or fights later on, bring up that mental picture. Bring that mental picture, how beautiful she was under the chuppah, and your anger, whatever you're upset about, will be much less, because you'll see the beauty. You'll see her beauty of that moment. And if we take mental pictures of things in life, of moments that you have to be tuned into the moment. You have to make sure you tune into a moment and you take a mental picture and say, I want to keep this picture to me. Most of the times what happening is today is that, like Sam was saying, people do it to post it on Facebook. But posting on Facebook, so you get to show it off, but we have like a million pictures. Yeah, it's funny because like in the old days, you only took a picture. If we look at the pictures of my grandparents and everybody, so it was like these pictures of my grandfather in the war, in his uniform, or my grandfather in with my grandmother. Like we have so few pictures. Those were the pictures that they took, like these big major moment pictures. Today, if people are going to look back and say, oh, what do we see pictures of? Everybody's lunch. They have, every like ridiculous thing. People taking pictures of every ridiculous thing. So pictures become worthless. They become nothing. So a way to get around this is to take a mental picture. Say, I want to preserve this thing. And then journal it. Journal it is you write down, just for a few minutes, you sit down and you write in a journal what that picture means to you. And then you come back to that picture. You keep that picture forever. And then you could appreciate that moment. Now, of course, during time, as time changes, the moments will change. Sometimes you become better or crazier. Or, when I have these mental pictures, and Deborah will say to me, that never happened like that. You won't have that. But, it's my mental picture that I have, and it becomes meaningful to me. And I journal it and make sure that I remember the situation so I could come back and try to appreciate it the best I can. The next thing that we could do, I think, to savor a moment is you need to let the little things that would ordinarily bore you suddenly thrill you. I had the zchus, I had the merit to attend shiur with Rav Avigdor Miller. And the Victor Miller, he used to give a shiur in Brooklyn. It was a small shiur. He'd give 1,000,000 shiurim throughout the day. He would just, he was really a big Talmud Chacham. And he would give these shiurim throughout the day. He'd just kind of go through like a sefer. He'd like read the sefer and he would talk. And there was small amounts of people. When I was there, it was just a few people. And then he would always end off saying, if there's any questions about anything in life, just let's ask. But the one thing that Victor Miller had, one was he put everything on tapes. So he was the first one with like millions of tapes. So people used to go listen to his tapes because those were the Torah tapes. But one thing that he was really known for was his ability to look at the little things. He used to walk on the street and see an ant and like just study the ant. And people would say, what are you looking at? And he'd like look and he'd come up with how amazing the ant is. To tell you 1,000,000 facts about the ant. So this story says, once a grandchild visited Rav Miller at his home and was puzzled to see his grandfather with his face in the sink. After a few minutes, Rabbi Miller stood up and breathed deeply. The air is so wonderful, he said. His grandchild said, why was your face in the water for so long that you couldn't even breathe properly? Rabbi Miller said, on my way home, someone started talking to me and commented that lately the air has been polluted. I didn't want my appreciation of Hashem's air to lessen, so I decided to deepen my appreciation of air. After depriving myself of air for just a short while, I now am even more thankful to Hashem for providing us with such wonderful air. Some of the little things in life that only if it's taken away, when somebody can't go to the bathroom, so then they appreciate Asher Yatzar. When somebody has a certain issue, then they start appreciating that issue. Well, what Victor Miller is telling us is that why we shouldn't wait for those things. We should look for the little things in life and try to make them thrill you. And you see, even who is this? Andy Warhol. What he did, that's what an artist does. An artist looks at things that we all take for granted and they say, wow, they look at it differently. Why they look at it differently? Because they're actually looking at it. They're actually looking at it and they're caring about it. And that's why, and it brings joy to them. It brings happiness to them. The Rambam in Hilchos Eidos, I'm not going to show this video, but because we don't have that much time, but it's something you could watch, just the beginning of the video. Just the beginning of the video. But Rambam has something very strange in Hilchos Eidos. It's based on a Gemara. Rambam says, and this is the halacha, that who is Pasal Eidos, who is somebody who can't be a witness to a crime. This refers to people who walk through the marketplace eating in the presence of everybody. Somebody who's walking and eating. That's what the Gemara says. Gemara talks about you shouldn't walk and eat. Why not? Why not? What is it about walking and eating? Because when somebody is walking and eating, they're not appreciating the food. They're not appreciating anything that God gives us. Everything is in a rush. You can't focus. Somebody who doesn't have any focus can't be a witness. You can only be a witness if you actually take the time and focus on things. You have to watch carefully. But if you're too busy that you can't even spend 10 seconds eating because you're shoving things down your throat while you're walking and you're running and doing 5,000 things at the same time, so that person you can't say is somebody who focuses on their life. There's an article that I have here. You could look at it. It's French versus American eating. French versus American eating. And what's interesting is that the French, and I've seen a bunch of things on this, the French, the difference is not that the French eat a lot less than Americans do when it comes to food. Our portion sizes are very great, but the French enjoy the food much more than we do. Even though we eat a lot more, they enjoy a lot more. Why? Because they take their time. Each dish is small portion, but they chew it very carefully. They enjoy the moment of eating. They have pleasure in eating. We have pleasure for the first bite of eating. The first bite is like, wow, that tastes good. And then we shove it down our mouth, right? And then we got to go to the next thing. So in this TED Talk, he talks about how fast we eat. How fast Americans, now he's talking about British also in this video, he talks about the British people, that we spend less than 10 minutes, like I think he said less than 10 minutes eating a meal. Like it's very, very quick. Each meal is very, very fast. People are eating very fast. Most people don't could spend 5-6 minutes just shoving down food down, and there's no appreciation of the food. There's no appreciation of life. They don't savor anything. And so if you want to get the pleasure, if you want the happiness of the food, of the experience of eating, you have to take your time. And then you can have each bite become pleasurable. You eat that one, you go, that was good. And you take time eating it, enjoying it, chewing it right, and then to get to the next bite and do the same thing. You'll eat a lot less. It's a lot healthier because you chew more and you actually digest the food better. And you get more pleasure from the food.
At Daimler, the German car company, they've got another great strategy. When you go on vacation, instead of saying this person's on vacation, they'll get back to you eventually, they say this person's on vacation, so we've deleted your email. This person will never see the email you just sent. You can email back in a couple of weeks, or you can email someone else. And so you can imagine what that's like. You go on vacation and you're actually on vacation. The people who work at this company feel that they actually get a break from work. But of course, that doesn't tell us much about what we should do at home in our own lives. And so I want to make some suggestions. You know, it's easy to say between, say, 5 and 6 p.m., I'm going to not use my phone. The problem is 5 and 6 p.m. looks different on different days. I think a far better strategy is to say, I do certain things every day. There are certain occasions that happen every day, like eating dinner. Sometimes I'll be alone, sometimes with other people, sometimes in a restaurant, sometimes at home. But the rule that I've adopted is I will never use my phone at the table. It's far away as possible. Because we're really bad at resisting temptation, but when you have a stopping cue that every time dinner begins, my phone goes far away, you avoid temptation altogether. At first, it hurts. I had massive FOMO. I struggled. But what happens is you get used to it. You overcome the withdrawal the same way you would from a drug. And what happens is life becomes more colorful, richer, more interesting. You have better conversations. You really connect with the people who are there with you. I think it's a fantastic strategy. And we know it works because when people do this, and I've tracked a whole lot of people who have tried this, it expands. They feel so good about it that they start doing it for the first hour of the day in the morning. They start putting their phones on airplane mode on the weekend. That way your phone remains a camera, but it's no longer a phone.
So most of the time, people today, it's a big issue that we have. It's the FOMO means fear of missing out. That people are afraid of, what's going on in the election. So they check 17,000 times the election to see what's happening, even though nothing's happening right now. You're just in a waiting. So people, they're always on their phones. They're always checking things out. So one of the things that we could savor, the moment we could savor, is to be present, to not be on our phones, to be present at the moment we have. I'd like to end off with two things. One is this beautiful story by Tolstoy. The story is, it's something that I've used, I've spoke about before. I actually like this kid's book of the story. I put it in here. It's called The Three Questions. It's Leo Tolstoy wrote this thing, Three Questions, and it's about a king who has three questions. The questions are, he had proclaimed throughout the kingdom that he would give great reward to anyone who would teach him what was the right time for every action, who were the most necessary people, and how he might know what was the most important thing to do. Those were his three questions. What was the right time? What were the right people? And what's the most important thing to do? And this story has it as a kid's story, but it's such a good story. I highly recommend, we're not going to listen to it now, but I put it in there for you to, somebody reads it. So I put it in there. But the answer to those questions is, remember then that there is only one important time, and that time is now. The most important one is always the one you are with. And the most important thing to do, good, for the one who is standing at your side. For these, my dear boy, are the answers to what's most important in the world. The most important time is now, to get the most out of now. The second thing, what is the most important person? The most important person who's the person who you're with right now. This is a big problem with the phone, because the problem with the phone is that you're talking to somebody and then the phone rings, right? So who's the most important person? Is it the person you're standing right next to you, or the person who's on that phone right now? And, you know, so everybody says, well, could you hold on, and goes and showing that the more important person is the one who's on the phone. And that's not the way it should be. It should be the person that you're with now. And if you want to know what good is, so it's what you're doing at that moment. That's the most important thing. Do what you're doing at that moment and focus on that. And that's when you'll get the most pleasure. So I have some takeaways, some keys to work on during the week, some easy things. But I think if we do a little bit each week, you know, we could get some help bring some happiness. So the first thing is I thought of share a good experience with somebody and then notice how it feels. This week, just take one experience that you have and share it with somebody and take note on how did it feel to share that experience? How did that experience change by you sharing that experience? 2, write about one experience you want and that you want to keep it in your memory, and write it in the journal. Now, I use a journal called Penzu. It's free. I actually pay for it. It's like $5. I bought it. I paid for it for the year, and it's a great journal. It's and I just write my thoughts, my thoughts on it. But you take one memory, one thing that happened to you that day, and you just write it down. Somebody did a thing called one picture. He actually took every day of his life. He took one picture. And then he has an app. There's an app called like One Picture a Day. And every day he took a picture. And then after like 10 years of doing this, he put it in this app. And now he watches every single day. He could tell you what happened every single day by just having that one picture. He could recap the day because he had that one moment that happened on that picture. He goes, oh, I remember that. I remember. But each time he did it, he reviewed. Next, take a walk outside and try to appreciate something that you didn't notice. Deborah and I have been trying to do this when we took walks. Now I'm back at work. It's harder. We're not taking the same walks, but when we do take walks, we try to stop and notice something. We'll notice the decorations for Halloween. We'll notice a tree in a bloom. We'll notice a house on a door that we never saw before. Try to appreciate something that you've not seen before and try to take notice of things. Think about how food tastes when you eat slower versus normal eating. Just take one thing and just one day, one meal, try to eat something, one thing. It could be one of your courses, one of the things. Try to eat it slower and tell me, do you taste more than just the first taste? Is it more than just the first? Are you appreciating the food any differently? 5, I was thinking, let's use other senses. It should be with all our senses. How about Havdalah? What happens if you have a new spice for Havdalah? Do you now appreciate Havdalah, or are you just running to get rid of Shabbos? But we made this bracha on the Havdalah. Take a moment and appreciate that smell. And finally, the last thing is try to put away your phone for one meal. If you're addicted to phones, try to put away your phone for one meal. But the most important thing is focus on the meal, the persons you're with, who you're eating the meal with, or, you know, the situation that's around you. Enjoy that moment. Don't just push it aside because of some other distraction. Focus on the moment, focus on the meal, and try to enjoy that particular moment. So that's it for tonight. And I thank you all for coming back. I hope you all work on some of these things. I certainly am doing it along with you. I'm getting a lot of pleasure trying to do this. And next week we'll have another class.
It was great. Thank you for your effort.
Thank you so much,
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
All right, no problem. I'll send this out. I'll send this out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's Elliot.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a
Thanks
good
for waiting for me.
Oh, of course.